So, folks, this is going to be like a somewhat of a different session. Normally, when I do webinars, I'm talking about, I'm delivering like more theory, more content. In this session, we're going to be walking through a journey we've taken a specific client of ours through being a BI team and making them into a, let's say, an AI enhanced team. And the reason I'm saying that is I've written a book about it. That book's coming out at the end of July, and I'm going to talk you through the journey of taking that team. So there's about 6 people on that team, and typical BI roles. And with a 90-day plan, we were able to bring them on a journey so that they can start building things that you're going to see in this presentation. So that's what we're going to be doing in this webinar. I'm going to loads of time for questions. So assume I'm going to be talking for like maybe 20, 30 minutes, though I'm very liable to go over. And then I'm just leaving time within that conversation for any questions, comments, anything you want me to dive in and focus on a little bit more. Awesome. Okay. Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I'm excited for this and showing you all the work. So we've been working on this stuff for maybe a year. So let's just jump over first, and I'm going to show you, by way of example, what's the end point? Where does BI need to end up? And there's like one of the things we've really struggled with BI is, the last mile, and getting dashboards adopted, getting intelligence adopted, insights adopted. So that's been hard. And from our perspective, at least for delivering data analytics, we've been really focused on change management up until like the last, like they say, the last 10 years, that change management being the main tool in our arsenal to get people using dashboards. And it's worked to varying degrees, right? But like we always get to around 60, 70% of adoption of the intended user base. And the rest are just like, don't care, right? Like they're not engaged. And it seems like it's a lost cause. The first thing that we're looking at for BI is, can we get closer to 100% by leveraging AI? So I want to show you what the end state should look like. So if you're a BI team, a data team, an analytics team, here's the sort of thing I think you should be building. So this is imagine you're a store manager, right? Like it's a grocery chain, and you're the data team, and you're building historically dashboards for store managers, regional managers, okay, people like that. They're your end users. And you might be using Tableau, Power BI, whatever tool it is, and you're finding with this group of users, especially the store managers, they're just not used to interacting with dashboards. And it's very hard to get them to work with dashboards. Now, indeed, we've been working on exactly this scenario with a grocery chain. And a lot of the store managers like worked their way up through the organization. So they started maybe pushing carts or working behind the checkout, right? And very practical, very hands-on. Using analytics and data in their role wasn't something that they're used to doing. So there's a lot of inertia to try and get over. So you could build a dashboard, right? You could definitely do that. But let's look at an experience for how you could do it differently using AI. Right? So now imagine this is the first time a store manager is going to log in to an experience, and we're asking them questions. Now we're doing this because we want to understand who they are. So if you've watched, any of my content or my organization's content for any amount of time, you'd be familiar that we put a lot of emphasis on the persona, understanding people, especially at the requirements gathering stage. You're building a dashboard, you need to go talk to people to figure out what they care about, what they're interested in. That's great. Like, do that anyway. But what if you can't? Also, how do you get more information from them just in time, like when you need it, when you need to deliver the insight? So what we want to do here is develop a profile of who the end user is, and not general end users, not like, hey, generally store managers. We want store managers, but now we want to go down to the individual level. We want to know how they make decisions. in my new book, I talk about decision velocity. We can really only improve decision velocity if we really understand how people make decisions. People make decisions completely different ways. Like you might be a more consensus-driven decision maker. So if you're looking at a dashboard in isolation by yourself, it's maybe good information, but there might be just that missing step where you're going, oh, I need to talk to Jane about this, right? And then when you have the opportunity to talk to Jane, it's a week later, and that's kind of gone out of your head, right? The momentum's not there anymore, right? Or the thought's not there anymore. So we want to figure out how people decide. And we've probably all taken various types of psychometric tests and different ways to understand your personality type, those sorts of things. Think that, right? Think sort of Myers-Briggs or these different sort of ways that you can understand different type of personas, different type of personalities. So that's what you're seeing here. Now we're trying to keep it very light in this example. You could obviously make this much more detailed. So let's look at this. We're asking the store manager, tell us about your store. It's a grocery store. What's the size? Okay, it's kind of medium. It's, 6 to 15 staff. And what's your management experience? Right? Pretty important question. Well, I'm a new manager. So that's great intelligence for us. Now, one of these key things that we've learned over the last year or two is the amount of data that you get just by virtue of starting to leverage AI. You get all of this additional layer of data about your customers and your audience and who you're designing for. And so this really emphasizes that. What drives your decisions? Now, this one's interesting because we've used this tactic for years, right? In kind of indirectly educating an audience on what they should be thinking about. And so when we're asking what drives their decisions, like most new store managers aren't thinking about what's driving their decisions. They're not there. They're thinking, look, I just need to keep the lights on. I need to make sure there's no drama. I need to keep the checkout queue short, right? Like they're the things they're thinking of. They're not really necessarily thinking in these terms, especially a new manager like what we're describing here. So this is almost educational as well as like, well, you should be thinking of these and what three are important to you, right? So I'll just go with operational efficiency. Who wouldn't want to maximize revenue? And let's say waste reduction. If you're in the grocery chain business, waste is a major issue, obviously, right? Like the products going bad, things disappearing off the shelves, right? Things like that. So it can be really, really important. How do you want to be alerted when something's happening? Like you need information, you need to take action, right? So let's say I want urgent issues and maybe like daily summaries. And okay, give me, upsell opportunities, what promotions I can run. That'd be cool. And what's your channel? Now, for this example, you could add in WhatsApp, SMS, Telegram, whatever channel is appropriate or that they have access to. And let's just go with Teams for now. So that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take the communication of insight out of the BI tool. And it can still be in the BI tool. There's no issue with that. But we're adding a layer of communication where the user is at. We want to meet them where they're at. And in this case, it's Teams, right? They're spending their time in Teams. But maybe for like, it could be SMS, right? And tell us a bit about your team structure. So let's just say, I'm just kind of picking arbitrary numbers here. We got some full-timers, we got some part-timers. And how long is the store open, or what's the structure of their working hours and shifts? Let's say extended hours. Okay, cool. And then choose your preferred visualizations. How do you like to see data, right? And let's just, kind of pick a few things here. They like bar charts, tables, and KPI cards. Cool. Okay, now their profile's complete. Now, you could go way more detailed, okay? So like, you could have way more questions, and I'm going to show you an example of this after, of what that would look like. But here, we're just giving them like a quick summary, and then they're straight into their dashboard in a sense. And it's not a traditional dashboard, right? It's an interface built by the BI team for them, customized for them, so tailored. So this is what I suggest BI teams start looking at is owning the entire experience of how insight is delivered. So if, you know, you can see, okay, look, if in this example, Sarah Martinez needs a dashboard, you can put it here, right? Like put the insights into this custom built app, just a web app, right? And we've had BI teams build these for themselves. So it's entirely within like the capability of what a BI team can do. What we're noticing is that most people just don't kind of believe it themselves that they can actually do this. And like it's like really a technical leap too far for people. But I can tell you today that BI teams can absolutely do this sort of work. So let's just click around a few of these things. So, you know, there's a few important decisions that are being surfaced for this user. Okay, you know, you need to do these things. And because this person we think is more of a collaborator, they can start collaborating with whoever they need to collaborate on to make this decision, right, to take this action. So this is all kind of cool, right? Like it's, you can see it's using the chart types that they like. There's always this important thing about how this affects their bottom line. Their decisions are helping improve the business. If they can sell more by acting on the data they're presented with, they should get a share of those savings. And this is something we've been pushing a lot. It's like, this is the next frontier, is how do you help people be more successful in ways that they actually care about? For many people, it can be measured and then surfaced in some sort of like more days off, bigger bonus, whatever that looks like. Okay, look, I could spend days on this. Let's jump back and I want to show you a way more detailed version of this experience. Oh yeah, Ryan, totally love the comment. This type of personalization was always the goal, but it just wasn't feasible for most teams in the past. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Totally agree. You know, we want people to have personalization. And certainly for us, the way we would do it is try and do it through personas, because it's just too, like, sort of like averages of user groups. It was just too hard to go build, you know, 30 different dashboards to cater for all the different personality types that might be there. But now we can do it programmatically. So let's look at a way harder example. Let's look at a data analyst within this same organization, right? So building an experience for someone who's a lot more technical that uses data in their role. Now I'm going to fly through this, folks, so like don't mind me. There's a lot of questions to answer and I don't want to bore you. But let's just say, look, they're you know, data analysts, somewhat, you know, entry level. They're in a centralized analytics function. What's your decisioning style? I'm going to fly through these, okay? There's like, this is more of a psychometric type test. Let me just pick on a few of these. Like, when given a new analysis request, I prefer a well-defined question with clear success metrics, or an open-ended exploration with room for discovery. Right, so I'm just going to fly through these. But basically, we're, again, building a profile of who this user is so that we can better tailor the experience for them. So let's go move on. What tools do you use? Cool. Let's just pick off a few of these. Right, and you can again see, right, this isn't just a vanilla type of questions for assessing their decisioning styles, right? It's specific to the role that they're in, so it's all tailored. We're giving them a few different scenarios. Okay, the point of doing all of this, right, is getting us to the next screen, which is then understanding. Let me just show you. It'll make more sense. Okay, we'll get to the final screen, understanding their personality type, right? So this is like a, you know, there's loads of these, right? The different type of personalities ones. We made this one up for this, right? For this customer, right? So we thought, okay, they're into kind of shipping and that type of field, and we thought, okay, it'd be cool to make it more shipping related. So you got the quartermaster, the navigator, the pilot, the captain. You know, for example, a navigator is more social and complex, so they need consensus when they're making decisions, right? They need to work with a team of people, you know. And if you're familiar with any of these type of psychometric systems, our personality type systems. Some personalities work well with other types, and then some don't work with others. There's a communication style. There's different ways you need to work with folks. So you can see like a little bit more detail on understanding this data analyst, and then all the insight will be then tailored to the results of this, right? And of course they can evolve over time, right? But that's generally the idea, is if we can tailor the experience to this level of detail, we can drive much more action. So this is the end goal, right, for the BI team. How do you do it? So I'm going to walk you through the journey. Of course, it's not the only journey you could take, but I'll just say it's a journey that we've had some success with. So let's just jump into it. So what you saw was basically the outputs of something that's very tailored and specific. But you could argue, couldn't a AI team do that? Why is it the BI team that would do that? Why is this like a sort of data analytics BI function versus a let's hire an AI team, or let's evolve the software team? And all of that's good, right? Like all of those ideas are good ideas, and there's pros and cons to each of them. I'm going to advocate for the BI team evolves into at least a very capable AI enhanced BI team, with the potential for the BI team to start taking on the function of AI within the organization. And I have a case to make for that. So if you're the data team, you should already know the business, right? It's like should, right? In inverted commas, right? Often not the case, but you really should. You also should know the data, the KPIs that are there, the metrics that have been defined, right? So all of these things we should know as the data team. And those things are hard, right? They're like hard things to know. They're hard-won victories over time. And you should also know generally the types of decisions the organization needs to make, as well as the politics. Now, these are intangibles that are hard to quantify. And if you think of like, well, I can just use AI to get up to speed on this stuff, it might be hard to get up to speed on the politics internally within the organization, right? There's just some things that are going to just be hard. That experience is going to win, at least for now. Now, what your team doesn't have is the AI skills. So there's a gap, an obvious gap, right? Like clearly there's a gap. Now, if you were to build a new AI team, sure, they know AI, and that's great. That is awesome. It's a deep and complex field. I remember one time working with Deloitte Analytics, and one partner from, I think it was audit, had asked my boss, who was the analytics partner, hey, why don't I just teach my team how to do data science, in a few weeks, and so my boss was kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, it's like that takes years of experience. And yes, it does. And to get good at this stuff, yes, it does. However, you can have a veneer of expertise, obviously using AI tools, right? And we're going to get into that. So as we go through this, I am not advocating that people blindly use AI to do things. I am absolutely not advocating that. But what I will say is there is a tremendous acceleration that can happen that can help you learn what the AI is actually doing as you do it. Now, the new AI team, if you were to hire them, they don't have the business context. They don't know the data, and they haven't established the trust with the business in knowing their data, as well as they don't have the years of tenure that a BI incumbent might already have, right? So there's a number of issues here, or challenges for you to overcome. So the question for you and your organization is, which one's easier? I would argue the existing BI team is easier to upskill in AI, right? And you can debate that, right? But I think it's a lighter lift. Certainly with where AI is and the tools, the AI assisted coding tools are right now. So with that in mind, I want to start introducing this concept with a team that we worked with. It was a credit union, and here was the layout of their team. Like, probably fairly typical, right? So they had an analytics manager who's basically managing the team. reports to the CFO. Not always the case, right? But for smaller BI teams, can often be the case, especially for financial industries. And that really presents its own problems, right? There's challenges there. There's 2 BI analysts, 1 BI developer, a data engineer, and it was a new data scientist that had been brought onto the team. Now, the thing that happens, and you've probably all heard of this, right? So some leader in the organization goes to some sort of conference or sees some sort of video, right, and says, hey, look, what are we doing with AI? Like, let's do something with AI. And sometimes that's going to be put on the data team, and sometimes it's maybe more of a strategic question. For these folks, it was BI team needs to sort this out. So what we ended up doing, and what I'm talking through here in this session, is a 90-day plan. If you need to evolve your team, what does it look like? I'm recommending 90 days. It's short enough to show, hey, we're doing something. It's long enough to actually take something and show value. And so I think it's a reasonable window. I think if you take much longer than that, there's probably something wrong with your process and approach to how you're leveraging AI. And if you take much shorter than this, I think maybe you haven't spent enough time on picking a use case that's going to have an impact to the organization. And this is really important. Like, these first 30 days, it's like, Nick, why are you like 30 days to find the work? Like, which project you're going to work on? What are you going to apply AI to? I would argue this is probably the most important step. It's like, you get this wrong, you're going to set your AI scenarios and use cases back. Right? So you want to be real careful that you're picking the right use case to apply this against. So let's just look at that first. The very first thing you need to do, in the first 30 days, is pick something that really matters to the business. Don't go with chatbots, like don't go with all the obvious things. What we've noticed over the last year is, so we've built over, it's over 28 products now, like AI tools for different clients, but also multiple we have 4 that are live in production that are subscription based. And what we've noticed is there's a lot of competitors out there for those, like, it's like we might have had an idea last year, right? For like, hey, let's build an exam preparation app. Okay, lo and behold, 500 people had that same idea, but they're individuals, and they build the app really, really quick. The problem they have is they're not applying the typical rigor you should apply when you're building an app. They're doing all the build, but they're not doing the UAT. They're not doing the code review. They're not doing is it valuable? Like, is it useful, right? Like all of these things that should happen. And so there's huge risk here in going after something that you could think you can tackle because it's now easy to code. I would advise not doing that. We've been burned by it. We've seen lots of other people be burned by it. So don't go after something just because it looks like it's massive value and it can go like, hey, this is awesome. I would advise go for something small. Go for something somewhat unremarkable. Somewhat unremarkable. Don't go after like changing the whole organization, changing the world. Go after something that's like reasonable. And that seems like, hey, in 90 days, I mean, we could easily build this. That's the one you need to go after. Not 90 days, yeah, maybe we could do it, right? Like 100% don't go after something like that, okay? For these folks, they wanted to see, looking at a fairly high level question, can we answer this? Can we solve for this, right? And it was, which members are likely to reduce balances or leave in the next 90 days? Now, in credit unions, members are basically customers, right? So you are a member if you have an account with a credit union. And what do we do about it? So this was one thing that it's somewhat manual. There's a somewhat manual process, right? They have it in a dashboard and they look at it, but they wanted to try and surface it a little bit easier for people to make decisions on. And this was compared to a few other use cases, right? So we had a few other scenarios to say, let's try and build something for these. And this was the one that came out on top. So, and forgive me, if it's not super specific to your industry, this is new, right? So like I don't have like 50 examples I can show you. This is the one that's the most mature example that I can talk you through. Now, with these folks, right, it's a BI team. They never heard of RAG. They never really heard of fine tuning. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to do it. So this is sort of like the first thing we needed to overcome was like, okay, how do we enable this BI team to understand some of the fairly basic but foundational concepts to surfacing insights to people if you're not in a BI tool, right? If you're not looking at something visually, maybe, it needs to be sent via text, right? For these folks, it was Teams. And the way they wanted to surface the insight was in Teams, that they would get a message in the morning, right? Hey, here's what's going on. And then they could chat back, right? To go, okay, what do I need to do? Tell me more about this data. And if you're not familiar with RAG and fine tuning, there are basically two ways to access data. Think of it this way. If you're taking an exam and you can have an open book in front of you, open book exam, and there's the question, hey, like, like what's 2 + 2? And in the book, it's like, oh yeah, that would be in, chapter 5, and I'll go to chapter 5 and I'll flick over the pages and it's like, oh, it's page 93, it's paragraph 4. Super specific, right? Like that's RAG, retrieval augmented generation, right? It's like you didn't have to memorize it, but it's going to take you a little while to flip through the pages and find it. Okay, so that's RAG. The fine tuning piece is same exam, but instead of an open book, you just had to memorize everything, right? So it's in your brain, right? And you can kind of answer it really quickly. But maybe you don't know what page it's on, but like, who cares, right? Like, it doesn't really matter, right? So that's sort of the difference. So when BI teams are working with this is one of the first things you need to sort of figure out. 100% do RAG every time if you're starting this, right? There are benefits to using fine tuning, which we can talk about later on if anyone wants to talk about it. But I would advocate for RAG. Okay, so moving on from that, right? So there's like overall architecture, picking the problem, what we're going to try and solve for, and how we're going to do it. There was 2 pieces to this solution, right? So first 30 days, pick the right use case. 30 days is loads of time, but you need to talk to people, get consensus, make sure it's the right use case. Next 30 days, you're building. You are building that use case. And this one had 2 parts to it. Firstly, it is a lightweight analytics model, right? So the data team's already familiar with how to do this. This isn't new, right? Particularly because this specific team had brought on a data scientist already, so they were able to build a model. And then they had to build the front end, or the piece that interacts with the business, the RAG piece, right? So this was going to be in Teams. They might have also done an SMS one. I'm trying to recall, but basically how they interact with it, right? So the team, we trained them how to use Codex and Claude Code, and there's a few other things I'm going to talk about that in a little while, but basically the team went and built this with some handholding. And so that was another 30 days of work, right? Where they're going after each person within the BI team had a specific set of things that they were going to start learning and adapting their role to, right? So let's say a data engineer is more of the person who's going to be doing some of the code work, right? So the BI developer might be more a person working on the semantic layer to support that work, right? So all things are sort of familiar with, but what's really important is, where are you doing this work? And I was on a podcast the other day there, and we were talking about it, value-driven data science, where for me, this seems like one of these things where it's like just a huge risk for BI teams right now. If you're getting into AI, where are you running your models? Are you using frontier models exclusively? They're awesome. Like, frontier models are brilliant, especially like Fable from Anthropic now, but it's such a massive risk. It's such a big risk. These companies are about to go IPO. These prices are not here to stay. Like they're going to get prohibitively expensive. If your sole strategy is on frontier cloud models, I think you're in real trouble. So what we've been advocating for is a hybrid approach. You should have some frontier usage. Makes sense. Currently, with the pricing now, it makes a pile of sense. But we think private AI and sovereign AI is the way to go. And so you should have your own infrastructure to a degree, right? So, and I'm happy to talk about that. We've gone down that road. We've bought different types of infrastructure. You can see the rack behind me's got different GPUs in there. We've been trying with, playing around with. But we really think like a BI team should, if you're planning to evolve into AI, you 100% need a strategy around your infrastructure. I would argue it is the most important strategy to have when you're thinking about AI. So foundational, because your entire business, if you start building AI into your organization, and that is entirely dependent on if the CFO agrees with the price that they're paying for whatever subscriptions you have, right? Cite me 1 year from now. If you think GPUs are cheap now, are expensive now, not at all. They're a bargain now. They are an absolute bargain right now. I would be buying up GPUs if I was in BI wanting to get into AI. Okay, so just heed my words. This is going to happen. It's just a matter of time and when. So now finally, so the first 30 days is picking the use case. The next 30 days was coming up with the build, right? Like actually building and implementing. Now, of course, in the first 30 days, you can also start getting your BI team ready for doing this sort of work, right? The final 30 days is basically adoption, making sure people are actually using it. And one of the hardest things to do is getting people to own decisions. So this is what you're going to start to find with BI. In the past, we've gotten away with not caring who's the decision maker and the decision owner to a degree you don't care because like no one's using it anyway. So, but now they will. And that's that's a real challenge. That is a real challenge. It's like getting ownership and accountability of who's actually going to make decisions with this. And that is hard. It's the hardest thing, I think. I think it's the hardest thing in this process is you're now able to tell people you need to do this. But people don't want to be accountable for making a decision, right? And that's why you saw at the start when I showed you that demo solution, we have to understand people's decision-making style. We now have to own that as the BI team. I used to advocate for, look, we have to own change management and adoption because no one else is. No one else is going to own that. And if you do all the work on the data in the back end, right, and delivering insights, who cares if no one's adopting it, right? So we used to advocate for that. Now we're advocating for you need to know who's owning the decisions and who needs to take action on those decisions, because we're at that point, right? We're at that point where the last 10% of delivering insight to the organization, we're there now. And it's not adoption anymore, it is decision making. Who owns the decisions and what is the velocity at which decisions are going to be made? And I think BI teams and data teams are going to start being measured on decision velocity rather than number of dashboards shipped. Are we enabling decision making in the organization? And how is that set of decisioning improving the bottom line, increasing revenue, reducing costs? So this and this is where most pilots fall flat, like, by the way, right? They build the thing, which is cool, but they don't do this. And this is the hardest because you're dealing with the humans, right? You're dealing with people. It's the hardest part. It's very tempting, myself included, for people that work with data, let's just say, who are generally traditionally more introverted, like working with the data, don't really like working with people. And all your value, you're going to get up to this point again, and you're going to have the same problem. It's just a different version of the same problem. We have to work with the people and figure out their decision-making style. So this is the new frontier, I think, for BI teams. Okay, so let's just quickly look at some of the roles that I think, how they evolve. Now, I think it's sort of too early to lock into like a specific, a data analyst will definitely become a decision advisor. I don't think I can say that. But what I can say is maybe tendencies, right? Like leanings in different directions. So if we take like a data analyst, what are they actually doing, right? Maybe to go back to what Ryan was saying earlier, like maybe the original intent. What's the original intent of a data analyst? It is basically for them to support decision making. Like that's really like they're getting data to help people make decisions. Now they can move more forward into the decisions become closer. They're within arm's reach, so they can help the organization make decisions and advise on decisions. A BI developer becomes more of a insights curator. So it's less about I'm putting this in a dashboard. It is more about where does this insight need to go in order for someone to make a decision. It's probably not, depending on the audience, not always going to be a dashboard. Right? So it's we need to kind of shift our thinking. Is like, where is the user at? On the example of the store manager, it's often going to be SMS, right? They got their phone with them. They're walking around the store the whole time. They're not carrying a laptop with them, right? They don't have Tableau or Power BI there on their laptop. They need just-in-time insights, right? And that's often going to be something even as basic as it sounds, SMS. Moving on to the data engineer, I think this is the role that potentially changes the most. If you think of like the app that I showed you at the start, that was built in React, Fast API, front end. It's really the job of a software developer, right, to really understand how that works. But now if you were to build that as a software developer, without using AI code assistance, right? You're probably talking a few months of work. This one I've been sort of like struggling with. My own background is software development. My major is computer science, and I specialized in AI neural networks back in I graduated in 2002. I personally feel like I earned that right to go through that whole process and that whole learning, and I had the battles and all of that. I don't, it's like you could let your ego get in the way and say, look, no one else should be able to do that with AI, right? But if you're at all familiar with Michael Abrash, he's one of the main coders for id Software, at least it was back in the day. He wrote the Bible on game programming. It's like in C, and he came out at the end of last year and he said, AI assisted coding is almost on a par with his abilities of coding. Now that should make us all stand up and think, okay, if someone like Michael Abrash is saying that, there's really something going on here. And that was 6 months ago. So it's like 2x better now, at least, right? So I would advocate the data engineer becomes effectively the builder of the interfaces that people are going to be accessing their data from. Using the tools like Codex, right? Claude Code, all of those tools. I will put a little asterisk beside that because I did say earlier, you should have a blended model of how you use frontier models, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Then the data scientist, right? So can become focus more on experimentation. And this is where your hardware and infrastructure really matters. This whole team is going to be learning a new skill. We don't want to have them to feel like, oh, we're going to be spending $10,000 a month because you're experimenting on the frontier models. We don't want to limit experimentation. And that's why having something hybrid, having some local development environment, whether it's like, 196 gig GPU or whatever it is, right? But having something local where your team can experiment is really important. And then finally, the project manager, product manager, their role, like their productivity pretty much becomes 10x, right? But also it needs to, because the productivity of the whole team is becoming far greater, far more capable. All right. One of the challenges that we've seen, and it's obvious, you could easily predict this, right, is if your BI team starts evolving in this way, a new gap emerges. And it is, they're not a software team. They're not used to the software cycles, right? Let's say an AI enhanced software development lifecycle. We need to get them up to speed on that, right? And this should be owned by the project manager, right? They're the one who needs to go, okay, I need to figure this thing out. I need to upskill a little bit, and we need to ship insights like software, like a software team. So I don't want to underemphasize this when this one's important, right? So finally, what happened? Like, what was the outcome of doing this? So we found within this 90-day period, the team was able to start saving about $50,000 per period, right? So material benefits, not massive, not transformative, right? But you don't need transformative for a 90-day program, right? Like, you need a win. That's kind of directionally, yeah, this is good, right? But what was the cool thing was, instead of hiring a whole new team, let's say new AI capabilities, the team was now able to focus more on the analysis and delivering insight than kind of like the day-to-day drudgery of the BI team, what they'd normally do, right? And decisions then were starting to be made in minutes rather than days, right? So there's lots of big wins there. So I know I've gone a little bit over time, folks. I do want to leave a little bit for questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. And just want to wrap up with, if you do need any support or help, we do training for BI teams, specifically BI teams. We're fairly deep in the subject ourselves. I've also shifted my BI and analytics team, both here in the US and the Philippines, to be basically an AI enhanced BI team. And so we're living and breathing this stuff, but we're also doing it for our clients. And as well as, if you need any support for AI analytics data, would love to chat. Also, you can pre-order my third book on Amazon right now, the AI driven data team. So thank you for your time. I hope all that sort of made sense. I will share out this deck afterwards. Since you all went to the trouble of signing and registering, I'll send you the deck. Feel free to reach out to me via email. I'll send the email to everyone with the deck in there. And if you want to reply, we can have a conversation. So I'll stop there. Just see if there's any questions. If anyone wants to chat. Now, I'm not sure on Teams if anyone's able to unmute and have a conversation, but if it works, then great. I've not done this one before. But thank you all. Thanks for your time. Feel free to drop off, and if you don't have anything else you want to cover. I'll share the recording as well, folks. Oh, yeah. Okay, Mike. So, yeah, good question. We've been mostly, sorry, yeah, the question is, which AI assisted tool have we been using mostly? It's gone back and forth. It's gone back between Codex and Claude Code. So it's like, it just went back to Claude Code like yesterday. They released Fable. It varies. I mean, I think it's getting to the point where it's just they're so capable now. We use Codex more for project planning. But we have been using it mostly for like the last 3 months for all the type of coding. And before that was Claude Code. I think we're kind of going back to Claude Code this week, and that's the speed that it's changing at. It's sort of crazy, the speed that it's changing at. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. I can't give you a concrete answer. It just keeps changing. So we sort of try and stay on top of it. Yeah. Thank you. Anna, okay. Yeah. So Anna's interested in the process we used for picking the projects that we're working on, like in that 30-day window. What's the first project? For me, Look, I'm really the person that's like the shiny object, right? Like, let's go after the biggest, most exciting thing because it's fun and cool, right? That's rarely worked out for me with this AI stuff. So I'm kind of almost pendulum swinging the other way, where I'm like, let's pick the least exciting one. You know what? Why don't I just show you one? For any of you that want to stick around, let me just show you. Let's go finance, financial services. Yeah, invoice automation. Look, super unexciting, super unexciting. But this is an app that we built for a client where it takes the data out of their source systems. In this case, it's SAP, I think. So like the data team already knows all this stuff, right? But we've taken a 14-day process for consolidating their invoices, which they do every roughly quarter, and then basically surface it into a report. Right? So basically it takes all these source systems, you see them all here. Yeah, it's not exclusively SAP. There's no data exposed. This is all synthetic data. Okay, so you're not seeing anything confidential. The model just then categorizes. Like, it's super simple. Like, it's, it's a labeler basically, right? So there's a few different things happening in this process. And then it goes on to validate. Now, the validation is where this whole process roughly takes 14 days for a human to do. Most of it's happening in validation, most of that time. So you can kind of see, right? So any adjustments that need to be made, this one doesn't really change. It's still largely human driven. Finalization, and then analytics. So we've replaced multiple tools and made the finance team's job way easier. Now it takes 2 days instead of 14 days. Now, this is a super unsexy, unexciting pilot to go after, but I think it's the perfect type of pilot to do in a 90-day project that we're advocating for here. Wouldn't have been my choice, but it worked, and it got them the wins that they were able to make more investments in AI, right? So that's really what they're after. Great question, though. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Oh, Anna, again, what's that front end you have? This is like just a demo platform we have. Basically, all the apps that we built, we surface here. And so we do this we're actually, it's kind of cool, actually. I can announce it here for the first time. We're opening up a lab an applied AI lab in the Philippines, in the Shangri-La Hotel. So we've done a partnership there with them. We're taking our clients that are over there in the Philippines into that experience with the aim of opening one up over here. So we currently have like a mobile experience, right? Like big touchscreen and all of that we bring to client sites, and we can show them the demos, do Art of the Possibles, do actual builds live. That's partly why we have the team in the Philippines, is like we can build stuff live 24/7 for doing workshops. But we're eventually going to build a applied AI lab here in the Pacific Northwest. More to come on that. That's really exciting. I'm spending most of my time on that. Awesome. Yeah, any other questions, folks? Otherwise, we can wrap it up, but I'm happy to chat more. Anything there on Teams? Yeah, I think yeah, agreed. Okay. Cool. I'll stick around anyway, folks. I think most of you are dropping off anyway. I'll share out the deck. I'll share out the recording, and if you want to chat, let's chat anytime. Thank you.